Hi all and welcome to another evening, another show, wrong show there, another show with the truth, honour and integrity with your host Thomas Williams. I hope you enjoy this show. It's packed with the usual intel, etc. and some fairly lengthy op-ed pieces. And tonight is October the 19th and we really are. Hi all, yes, it's that time of the week again, and another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show with your host Thomas Williams, and tonight is October the 19th. What do we have tonight? A fair bit of explosive intel coming after the news. I played the first song for a reason. We're kind of living on the edge in many ways. And the world's in a lot of turmoil. It's not just America. I could do news items on virtually every country around the world, with conventional wars, weather wars, mind wars. That's going on everywhere. And it's all going on at the same time. And then we have the factions war ongoing, which is ramping up. You'll find out why soon. And the factions war brings the alternative media confirmations of what was alleged to be conspiracies. You know, many of the former conspiracies, as they were called, has now been or have now been outed and currently ongoing, and this is adding to the carnage as well. Meanwhile, there's a lot of house cleaning going on in many countries. Premiers, presidents, other heads of state being charged with and convicted of fraud and or corruption. Now, I suspect the fraud and or corruption is being used to soften the blow to the public, and it's quite possible that other more heinous crimes are being addressed in private but being presented to the public as fraud or corruption. Time will tell. And other crimes once considered in the realms of conspiracy only, like pedophilia in the church and in various other forms of corporations known as schools, hospitals, police, the courts and the governments. They're all involved. I know that disappoints many and shocks many that it's that widespread and it's that connected. But they've been doing this over a long period of time. They get people in place there. And you think, well, you can't convince. One of the arguments from the people who don't believe what we've been telling them is it's not possible to coalesce a whole group of people into following an order of that nature. Well, it is, because maybe there's more pedophiles than we actually think is possible. People think it's the older man in the long length coat. No, it involves all ages and all people, both sexes. Again, it's classed as a male thing, but there's female pedophilia ongoing. In fact, some of the biggest rises in sex crimes are from the female side. Again, that's something not a popular opinion throughout society, but we can't carry on ignoring it. So pedophilia is now out all over the place, including the synth news. You know, it's plastered all over it. And yes, they cover it up with other events. like they've largely blotted out the Weinstein event, but there's many more coming forward, and you're going to see a lot more coming forward stating they've been abused, or a lot more accusations of X did this to me and Y did that. It will run and run and run. Now, what we're all waiting for is one of the big ones to be arrested and not outed after they've died, like Ted Heath or Jimmy Savile. And now allegations this week against Patrick Swayze. You know, why are we waiting for these people to die? Why don't we out them now while it's in the public arena and be done with it? Also ongoing, adding to the turmoil, is there's protests ongoing in several countries, too many to name, and for various reasons. And basically what's happening, more and more people are now beginning to realise we've all been lied to over and over and over again. Catalonia being the prime example. Of course, the Spanish government, who were part of the kings and the houses that have been prevalent in Europe, Germany, Holland, Britain, Portugal, all part of that one giant conglomerate that eventually moved over to America and corrupted this country. So Spain has put the foot down and arrested the leaders of the people who have pushed forward for independence for the Catalonian people. I expect that to get more and more ugly as time goes on. But as you can see, the media's not covering it. It's not what they want to see. They don't want to show people, other people standing up. That's the last thing they want, is for the people themselves to stand up. So you're only going to see news the way they want to report Catalonia, of how bad the Catalonian people, they're all rioting and this and that. It's rubbish. It's like when there was a mass demonstrations in Israel, attended by both Israeli and Palestine people. They've had enough of the war between the two peoples. That's largely got nothing to do with them. They don't want us to hear that. They want to divide and conquer, and on it goes. And then we've also got false protests going on. And I mentioned this particular guy a few weeks ago, Richard B. Spencer. He's the paid agent spouting his agency-fed script of white supremacy, and the violence and the incidents caused by his event in Charlottesville is now ongoing here in Florida, in Gainesville as well. Don't fall for it. It's their last resort, is to get all the people fighting over colour, gender, you name it. And don't fall for it. It's like this is the new Black Lives Matter, because they got exposed by this show and others that the top end of Black Lives Matter were all paid by agencies, and the former entity known as George Soros. Notice, since Soros was reported dead last November, Black Lives Matter have faded into the background. Coincidence? Time tells. So now we have this Antifa which is nothing to do with fascism. It's all a ruse and another agency-fed script designed to get the people fighting each other and subsequently rioting, which subsequently leads them to provide the solution, which is what they wanted all along, which is martial law. Then it will get ugly for all of us. Because nobody will know which side is which. And then we also in the news is more 9/11 exposure, the Clinton emails, agency issues of underhandedness and skullduggery. And it gets more and more difficult each week on the news section of the show of which parts or which topics to highlight or cover. So there is a lot going on. We were warned that, people who listen to this show were warned the news would get interesting in some aspects, but it also, you have to be aware of being overloaded with it. And maybe a 3-hour show from me doesn't help either. Or maybe it does. Seems it does to most people anyway. I know it's a lot to take in, but we're getting to that time where everything's getting rather busy. Right, let's get into, we better do the emails and all that stuff first before we get into some news. And the email for those who want to ask questions in for the show or pass comment is truth.honor, spelt the American way, Honor, not the European way, as some have made that mistake. Truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. And the link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user 8955881. And the articles website, which also has the archives of the show, and you can also listen in live from that site, is thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. And we have the Facebook site, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative is MeWe. And you can join that and find it. I know people are having difficulty finding it because it's listed as truth-honor-integrity, or you can send your email address to the Truth, Honour and Integrity @gmail.com, or private message me on Facebook and we'll add you into MeWe. And then we have the People's Club donations website, and that is thepeoplesclub.org. For those of you who had issues with donations, for some reason somebody changed a few things around that they shouldn't have done, and that's now been fixed. So thank you to Michael for doing that. Right, let's get into some news before we get into the intel and a couple of op-ed pieces. In the opening piece I mentioned about charges of corruption and/or fraud. Here's another one. The South African President Jacob Zuma must face charges of corruption, fraud, racketeering and money laundering. The Supreme Court of Appeal has ruled and agreed with a lower court ruling last year that prosecutors could bring 783 counts of corruption relating to a 1999 arms deal. I would suggest it's more closer to now than that, but if they pull them in on whatever and remove these clowns out of harm's way, then it doesn't matter which year it was the corruption or whatever else was done. And the charges had been set aside 8 years ago, enabling Mr. Zuma to become president. The president has always maintained his innocence, don't they all say that? And in a statement, Mr. Zuma's office said the ruling was disappointing but anticipated. The president now expected South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority to consider representations from his legal team before making a decision about whether to prosecute him. Now, these charges relate to Mr. Zuma's relationship with the businessman Shabir Shaik, who was tried and found guilty in 2005 of soliciting bribes from a French arms company for the benefit of Mr. Zuma. Mr. Zuma and other government officials have been accused of taking kickbacks from purchases of fighter jets, patrol boats and other arms. So that could be another further evidence. As pointed out, there was a few last week of house cleaning in certain countries ongoing. A little bit more about the Vegas incident, and a warning from the Vegas tourism sector is bracing for changes in the aftermath of the massacre that killed 58 people, allegedly, in an outdoor music festival. Analysts who closely track the finances of the city's casino companies say Las Vegas will see a short-term dip in visitors in response to the shooting. Now, casino and the police may have to impose, here we go, I did warn of it, new security measures after alleged gunman, Stephen Paddock, brought more than 20 rifles into his hotel room and drove a car allegedly filled with explosives in the parking garage. The saying, "what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas," has been put on hold for now, as one as unveiled in the weeks before the shooting by the owner of the Mandalay Bay that says, "We are not in the hotel business, we are in the holy shit business." Interesting. Now, on October the 13th, which was last Friday, there was a hockey game at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, and guess what? The people had to go through security gates, scanners. Yes, Mr. Chertoff and Mr. Adelson. I would expect they'll get rolled around the country. Simple solution is to boycott everywhere that uses them. We're not the criminals here, but we're being treated as such. You know, this idea of security holds no value whatsoever. We're spending billions in America for alleged tracking of so-called terrorists, and yet everyone that commits one of these events is always on the list, but it's never tracked. So what use is scanners going to do? Except to line some people's pockets and to create more angst amongst the people, as you know, people won't wait. That you know, everywhere you go now, it's wait. What's next? Banks? You know, there's no end to it. Supermarket is to be scanned to go in there. This is what they're looking at. You know, and we spent vast millions on cameras everywhere, and yet none of these cameras ever picks anything up. And yet if you go through a red light, oh yeah, they'll pick that up. There's cameras up and down the strip of Vegas, all over the place, and yet not one of them has surfaced. That in itself is a conspiracy, is it not? Here's the next lot for the stupid synths that follow it. Companies in Scandinavia and America have already embraced microchipping as a way to make the office experience more seamless by allowing employees to easily it's in essence destroying us now. Slowly but surely. We're being more monitored, more spied on, more controlled, all with technology. And yet all these monitors and none of these big crimes spot any of them. Amazing, isn't it? While workers say they've welcomed the technology, like I said, stupid synths, one Russian hobbyist has reported he implanted himself with 6 microchips and warned companies not to abuse the technology. Yeah, right. The temptation to do so should make people nervous. I'll go a bit further than that. But the use of microchips in the workplace likely won't be limited to corporate environments. Again, they're starting to tell you pretty soon microchipping is possible to become a common tool for monitoring professional and amateur athletes as sports leagues try to allegedly eradicate the use of banned performance-enhancing drugs. What's next? Come and buy a Rogers microchip, or some famous basketball, or some famous, I don't know the names of the American sportsmen, or a Tiger Woods microchip. You can see it happening, and the synths will fall for it, because they put all these sports athletes on huge pedestals without realising they're part of the system that's controlling them. We can only warn. What's next? Microchip for those on social security benefits? You think that's far-fetched? Because I don't. Britain, world's financial outlet of corruption and fraud and skullduggery, announced this week. We did forecast this on this show 12 months ago, and here it is. Britain announces this week that in their own Rumsfeld moment, that £500 billion, which is roughly $630,000, has suddenly gone missing. So you know what happens next, because I've told you they have no money, and Brexit is looming. Who want Britain to pay a divorce bill out of the EU. And oops, we've got no money. So a revision of the country's accounts by the Office for National Statistics shows that the UK's net international investment position has collapsed from a surplus of 469 billion to a net deficit of 22 billion. Oops. And the ONS Blue Book overestimated the scale of financial assets Britain owns overseas and the depth of foreign investments by the UK. More than 1 in 10 people in the UK are cutting back spending as they prepare for Brexit, a survey found. And the UK, this report was done by Mark Capleton, who is the UK rates strategist at Bank of America. Really? So Britain hasn't got a strategist from a British bank. Not that they're much different. The big 5 in the UK and the big 5 in America are all cabal banks. We already know that. And now other economists have warned that foreign-owned pension funds and sovereign wealth funds are also very reluctant to invest their clients' money in sterling stock, which is the British pound, and bonds. So in other words, they're forcing them into we're not going to invest in your country if you don't stay in Brexit. This is all stage managed by the government, I might add. Don't think the government's fighting this because they're part of it. And the impasse over Brexit is seen as a major roadblock to foreign investment, with finance firms unwilling to commit in such uncertain political climate. Now, Miss Man Fiora Zeke Heil Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister of Britain currently, and her Brexit Secretary David Davis will sit down this week and have dinner. I personally want to throw it all over there, but they're going to have dinner with the European Council President Jean-Claude Juncker and his Brexit lead Michael Barnier. The four of them will attempt to find a way of moving the stalled talks forward as the UK and EU struggle to get past the issues of the divorce bill, which is 110 billion, which Britain can't afford, and that's why they set it at that. So they can't afford it. So then May goes back to the British people and says, oops, we can't afford it. And so we'll have to stay in a couple of more years, and then we'll take another vote, and then we'll fiddle it again. And then things just carry on. It's a bit like America in 1934 with the income tax. Just rolls on. This could be a sign of dissolution of wealth, given the person may no longer be here anymore. But it was announced this week that George Soros just gave away most of his wealth, like he would, to his charitable organisation, as reported by the Wall Street Journal this week. The billionaire philanthropist transferred 18 billion to Open Society Foundations, which is a sprawling international group of charities, which charities, yeah, money launderers is perhaps the correct term, that works in more than 100 countries on projects allegedly focused on refugee relief, which there is none, and public health and many other topics. The 18 billion figure amounts to almost 80% of the financier's total net worth. Before the transfer, Soros had net worth of 23 billion. Doling out his estate. Could be another pointer. What are we next? Yeah. It's been reported today that two unknown Democratic state legislators have filed bills to remove all remaining Confederate monuments from the state's public spaces. Make of that what you will. Are they going to remove all the Union ones from Washington? Well, let's get it right. The British Freemason ones. You'll know how many of the so-called founding fathers were all British Freemasons. You know, it's not easy for me because I was born in Britain, but I've lived here now for 15 years. I have no interest in Democrat or Republic. But is it not the case that the Confederate people, as history has shown, were the real Americans? They wouldn't wave the stars and stripes as they were aware it was a British flag. Were they not fighting to save the country, in essence? All that bullshittery over slavery when the president himself had slaves. It's nonsense. All it was British control, allied to the Vatican. And yet, people are thinking it's okay to get rid of Confederate flags and Confederate monuments, when in reality, history shows that they were the ones that were saving the American people from the foreign invaders. Whilst you continue to support the flag, stars and stripes, you are basically giving consent to foreign ownership of this country. And I know that disappoints and upsets many people, but the history has been shown to be a lie in this country from day one. Basically everything has been a lie. Be it flags, be it constitutions, that they switched them around that many times. There's 4 in operation currently, none of which applies to us. Bill of Rights, rogue Congress, they've been rogue for over 100 years. They're still in place. In fact, I think some of them are over 100 years old, the people in it. The ones, I always said this, the ones that they denigrate in the media are the ones to follow. Generally more right than wrong. Hate crimes, of course, that's been pushed again by the elephant in the room. You all know who that is by now. But it's risen in the last 12 months. Chicago, 20%. New York, 24%. Los Angeles, 15%. Philadelphia, 50% increase. And yet that's not the main one. The city with the largest increase in hate crimes was, lo and behold, Washington, D.C., which saw a 62% rise. Please don't fall for that nonsense. They've pulled that stunt over and over again on this planet, over thousands of years. I'm not too sure whether this article is correct. But I'm going to put it out because it's interesting nonetheless. But if it's proven bogus, I did warn about it. But if proven to be correct, this is the type of nonsense that this country has had to tolerate behind the scenes. It's now getting in your face. Of course, we had the Texas stupidity with the jizz woman senator who wants to fine men $100 for masturbating on their own. Yeah, right. And actually filed a bill for it. You know, we're paying for these clowns. Now, there's a document related to the Hurricane Harvey repair grant. So people who have had their homes damaged, they're applying for a repair grant, and they have to sign an agreement between the filer and the city of Dickinson. But it comes with a clause, apparently. Number 11, verification not to boycott Israel by executing this agreement below. The applicant verifies that the applicant does not boycott Israel, and 2, will not boycott Israel during the term of this agreement. Really? So you have to stand by Israel or you don't get your home repaired. Is this what we've come to in this country? Time for some lawyers to grow a set and take that district to court. Since when has a housing repair application been politicised? You wouldn't mind if it was this country. Do not boycott Democrats, or do not boycott Liberals, or do not boycott Republicans. You could understand that, even though it's ridiculous anyway. But another country? What has Israel ever done for America, apart from rape its citizens? $3 billion a year minimum to supply them with weaponry to go and blast the hell out of smithereens out of all kinds of other countries in the Middle East. They're not giving it to the Israeli people, are they? Clearly not, because they're protesting every other week over harsh conditions in Israel. Here's another pile of stupidity. Given in mind, all states are bankrupt currently. Not only the country, but all states are bankrupt, even though they wouldn't be if they went and took the kafir accounts and applied it. That's for another day, I think. But American cities are offering Amazon as much as $7 billion in tax breaks ahead of a Thursday deadline as they compete to house its second headquarters in their city. $7 billion in tax breaks. As if Amazon need $7 billion in tax breaks. The clown Bozo, or is it Bozo? No, it's Bezos. Well, same thing, really. Is now outstripping Gates, the world's richest man. Well, certainly the richest in America. And you've got bankrupt cities offering $7 billion in tax breaks. It's unbelievable. The world's largest online retailer has won promises from elected officials they should be unelected before their term, in my opinion, who are eager for the $5 billion plus investment and up to 50,000 jobs that will come with Amazon headquarters too. So which state offered the $7 billion? New Jersey, $7 billion in potential credits against state and city taxes if Amazon locates in Newark and sticks to hiring commitments according to a release from the governor's office. What if New Jersey gives them $7 billion of the public's money and they hire whoever they want and then threaten to leave after they've had the $7 billion? This is how corporate people work. They don't care. They don't care about us unless we're off sick. Across the Hudson River, New York City made a proposal without incentives special for Amazon, though the state is expected to offer some this week. And across the country, one of the largest bankrupt states offered $300 million. California. That $300 million would be better spent rebuilding the bloody homes that have been set on fire deliberately. Unbelievable. You just waste public money, hard-earned money that we've all, laboured for, put energy into. And these clans seem to think they can just throw it away to their pals. It's time the people started making them accountable, and really accountable. Will I fit this one in? Yes, probably. This is a brief introduction of what maybe become part of a larger story. It's similar in nature to the Scientology group. It has echoes of some of the practices of Waldorf Steiner group. Cultism. Most people have probably never heard of this particular group. It's called NXIVM, but it's spelt NXIVM. And it was set up by mainly women, but it has a master, and it's supposed to be a secret sisterhood that people were told was to create and empower women. Really, wait till you hear what they do to empower them. So to gain admission, they were required to give their recruiter, or master, as she was called, naked photographs or other compromising material, and were warned that such collateral might be publicly released if the group's existence was ever disclosed. Sound familiar? It should do. It operates on the same Hollywood, Vancouver nonsense. In fact, one of the bases of NXIVM is Vancouver. There's some serious stuff going on up there in Vancouver. I've warned about it many times. And the women in their 30s and 40s belonged to a self-help organisation called NXIVM, which is also based in Albany, but has chapters across the country, including Canada, which is Vancouver, and Mexico. Now, this person by the name of Sarah Edmondson was one of the participants, and she'd been told she would get a small tattoo as part of the initiation, but she was not prepared for what came next. Each woman was told to undress and lie on a massage table, while 3 others restrained their legs and shoulders, and according to one of them, their master, a top NXIVM official named Lauren Saltzman, what a nice Germanic name for you, instructed them to say, "Master, please brand me, it would be an honour." Really? A female doctor proceeded to use a cauterized device to sear a 2-inch square symbol below each woman's hip in a procedure that took 20 to 30 minutes. And for hours on end, muffled screams and the smell of burning tissue would fill the room. I mean, oh, dear me. We all know there's evil people on this planet with their unbalanced egos. But you have to be a special kind of stupid to be involved in what is supposed to be an empower group when you're calling the leader master and being branded. This is not like tattoo level. I've seen the branding. It's heavily raised. You don't singe or burn for 20 minutes and not have a huge raised cauterized issue right below the hip. So in other words, between the hip and between the woman's private parts. I mean, you have to be special kind of stupid. Why are these people doing this? You know, why did... beggars belief. You know, don't think for 1 minute I'm discounting what they're doing, because the fact that I'm highlighting is not. This has to be brought out into a wider public of what's going on, of these cults. But you also have to question why people would get involved in the first place. Now, since the late 90s, an estimated 16,000 people have enrolled in courses offered by Nexium, which it says are designed to bring about greater self-fulfillment by eliminating psychological and emotional barriers. What, by branding them? That really makes sense, doesn't it? Most participants take some workshops. Indeed. And like the group's executive success programs is one of the workshops. You know, all new age and enlightenment and self-empowerment. Meanwhile, come in here, give us some nude photographs, and we're going to brand you like cattle. But other people have become drawn more deeply into Nexium and have given up careers, friends and families to become followers of its leader, who is known as Keith Raniere, who is also known within the group as Vanguard. And Miss Edmondson, who was branded, and also ran the chapter at Vancouver, I might add, so she was a participant as well, filed a complaint with the New York State Department of Health against a person by the name of Danielle Roberts, a licensed osteopath and a follower of Mr. Raniere, who performed the branding according to Ms. Edmonds and another woman. Separately, a state police investigator told Ms. Edmonds and 2 other women that officials would not pursue their criminal complaints against Nexium because their actions had been consensual. Really? I can see the point being made. But branding people? Yeah. How far do you go? That's like a pedophile saying a 10, 12-year-old girl consented to sex, and it's okay. And clearly it's not, is it? State medical regulators also declined to act on a complaint filed against another Nexium-affiliated physician, Brandon Porter. Dr. Porter, as part of an experiment, showed women graphically violent film clips while a brainwave machine and video camera recorded their reactions. And this is according to the 2 women who took part. The women said they were not warned that some of the clips were violent, including footage of 4 women being murdered and dismembered. Women in these chapters were regarded as slaves. That's really empowering, isn't it? Oh my God. And they had to call the leader M, presumably as in master, as he liked to be called. And Mr. Raniere has been involved in numerous financial Ponzi schemes, but this venture he describes himself as a New Age teacher. There it is again, the New Age program, too many have fallen victim to that bullshit. Like Scientology, same thing, cultism. Now, who bankrolled all of this? Well, establishment people bankrolled it. Some of the names may be a surprise, or maybe not. This was mainly bankrolled by Sarah and Claire Bronfman, another nice Germanic name, who are members of NXIVM and the daughters of Edgar Bronfman, the deceased chairman of the Seagram Company, and heavily supported by a woman by the name of Lauren Salzman. Yet again, another Germanic name. But they continue to spend what one former NXIVM associate estimates is around $2 million per month, waging Mr. Ranieri's and NXIVM's numerous legal and public relations battle with various enemies. Skirmishes have involved retaining the services of self-professed GOP hitman Roger Stone and crisis communications firm Citric and Company, which is funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians including, go figure, Hillary Clinton and Mike Huckabee, and contracting a series of aggressive private investigators to carry out a bizarre array of schemes, like an ultimately abandoned attempt to assassinate the anti-cult activist and the deprogrammer, a guy by the name of Rick Ross. So Mr. Ross was trying to get hold of the people that have been in these groups and deprogram, because that's basically what they're doing. It's a bit like the Waldorf Steiner. They're programming the children into evil. Coincidentally, Mr. Ranieri also commissioned studies into establishing a sovereign country. Another former NXIVM consultant said, according to that consultant, the Bronfmans at one point wired $500,000 on behalf of Mr. Ranieri to a pair of purported, I would say, a pair of CIA agents, which is what it says. They say purported. I would say that was more realistic, in an attempt to smear a NXIVM member who had committed suicide. Ms. Bauchi said Mr. Ranieri's libertarian ravings are a sideshow, but the wealth within the NXIVM network is formidable. It includes former Enron executive Stephen Cooper, Black Entertainment Television co-founder Sheila Johnson, former U.S. Surgeon General Antonia Novello, and also actress Goldie Hawn. Who else was funding or promoting this? Richard Branson, he of Virgin fame. The company known as Sexual Status. Mr. Branson has hosted an intensive NXIVM course on the Caribbean islands he owns. He is also listed, along with Sarah Bronfman, as one of the two benefactors of the 2008 Albany A Cappella Innovations Conference, the culmination of Mr. Ranieri's brief obsession with cappella singing. I'll have more on that probably in future shows, but it's something that needed to be pointed out now, and maybe we can get a few more to step out once it's now highlighted of something that's probably largely unknown to anyone who listens to this show, including myself, until I found out about it this week. But it still beggars belief as to why and how people can lose all sensibility in the search for themselves, that they would compromise themselves in that way when you had to send naked photographs or compromising materials to join. That should have been enough for all, if not most, to say, I'm not being part of that. But then to be subjected to being branded. I mean, the skin was about half-inch thick. It beggars belief. 16,000 women subjected them to that nonsense. Right, we're going to go in, that's the end of the news and that exposure. We've got some heavy hitting intel coming up and some heavy hitting op-ed pieces as well. Maybe the music break will give a pointer. Bye for now. Hi all and welcome back to the second hour. I believe we've had cutouts in the first hour. Apologies for that. You know by now the fun and games we have to endure with this show, because it brings information and knowledge that they desperately don't want out. And here's something that they won't want out this week either. So, pin back your lug holes and get ready for this. Right, I played those two songs. Those of you familiar, I call certain cabal members the clowns, which doesn't go down too well in certain circles. But if they're going to continue to behave like clowns, then we'll call them as such. Except the clowns this week have been caught out. Big time. Now, about a month ago, maybe even 6 weeks, one of our team went to the bank and was given a range of banknotes that didn't look right, and as it turns out, they weren't. Our investigations went on, and on Tuesday, the rogue elements were busted with 130 billion of what is called super notes. Now, unlike regular currencies, these were not allocated and or registered with the correct numbers on the notes. For money to be validated, even if it's fiat, those code numbers on each note have to be allocated by the governments. Now, of course, you remember probably 3 or 4 months ago when I mentioned they printed out all kinds of notes in Hong Kong and they asked government to allocate numbers for them, of which all governments refused. Was that the governments of most of the countries are now aware of the skullduggery that's been going on. So these numbers had no allocation numbers and or weren't registered on the notes. And it's been found out that they were being issued in 22 regions around America, but there was actually more of them used outside of America than in America itself. So it's they've been printing out bogus notes again. Only this time they've been caught badly, and you'll find out why, and they will be dealt with accordingly. So what are these super notes? Well, what were they used for? Largely they were used to pay for services of the unpleasant nature performed by various mercenary-style groups operating in Syria and other places. But now they've all found out that they won't be getting paid. All the mercenaries not getting paid. And I'll tell you now, boy, are they pissed. Again, another case like last week's intel of friends can turn into enemies very quickly if things aren't delivered. And they're not. Our old friend, or perhaps not, Android was also part of this operation, and she and their entourage had until yesterday to pay for some bombings undertaken in Syria, and they have nothing to pay with. Oops. Execution-style contracts have now been taken out on a range of rogue and top people at the moment. It has nothing to do with the foundation. This is their own people because they've been trampled on by their own people. Ironic, really. But they could have avoided all this nonsense had they listened to the foundation, what the foundation people have been telling them for many months now, over a year. So they are trying to put these super notes into the system, and the foundation people challenged it, stating that these people who are issuing them have no power and or control, and also notified various other governments. And what took place is some of the governments asked for confirmation or full confirmation of these facts, that the people implementing these super notes have no power and or control anymore. And they were shown a way of how to confirm it themselves, and they did so. Oops. Further verification came via some rather surprising sources, or unexpected sources. The first one being the military in America. It seems they no longer believe their bullshittery anymore either. Finally. And also the US Department of Commerce. The US Department of Commerce were told to buy on behalf of the feds a load of put options on the stock market last week. Heavily invested in it. Now, for those who don't understand put options, people will bet on the stock market going up or the stock market going down. And you could, for argument's sake, it could be 10 to 1. So you put $1 in, and for every point it goes down, you get 10 back. Now, bearing in mind, I'd warned that they were trying to crash the market deliberately last Thursday, and it would attempt to take place on a Friday, and it would fail. Now, the put options were based on it being deliberately crashed the stock market last Friday. Had it done so, the Department of Commerce would have gained a lot of money that was then to be transferred to the Fed to play more games. Except it failed. And now the US Department of Commerce are forced to pay for all the puts that they put in, and they don't have the money to pay for it. Oops, again. The money to pay for it was going to come from these super notes. And that didn't come through, and now basically they are left in deep shit. Big oops. So they have also confirmed to certain governments that these people don't have any control or power, along with the US military. The you think that was explosive enough, you ain't heard nothing yet. Here's the next portions of it. The Bushes FL. In this past week, employed the Crips gang out of Los Angeles to take people out who block their way. Those Crips people were caught and dealt with in a unique way, in inverted commas, and a message to not try that again. I hope they took stock of that and don't, because the Bushes won't pay you either. The Bushes were also one of the groups who had made promises of funding via the super notes, except the groups who turned up to collect their payouts all went home empty-handed and not too pleased by all accounts. So that's another group who are now taking contracts on certain people. Talking about another person who's got a contract on it, Android. Android has fled America to Britain, not to do TV shows and or radio shows, or to break toes and ankles by falling downstairs. I told you clones or bots don't do stairs well, didn't I? She has fled as there's a price on her head from a separate group not affiliated with the Foundation people. So there's more than one group who want rid of her now. And appears nobody particularly likes the droid anymore. It's not just people who listen to this show and its affiliates or those connected to the show. So she has fled and is under the protection in the UK by the Knights of Malta group, who are connected with the Jesuits, as some of you may know. So that's why Anne fled to Britain. Because eventually in life, if you keep trampling on people, particularly in that world and level of skullduggery that she's involved in, they'll trample you back. And the Bushes and the Clintons and the Rothschilds have all promised many, many groups, including the military, some of the top generals, lots of funds and lots of titles based on bogus currencies. If it's not dings, dongs and dinars and all that nonsense, it's USN, it's TRN, it's super notes. And they all failed. Except they have already had the services from those people. And those people now realise, after turning up at Reno countless times, they've turned up at Reno more times than I've done this show. Again, a special kind of stupidity, where eventually you realise you're never going to get paid by these people, whether you've got it or not. The latter is the case. They have no funds anymore. I've been telling people this for around 12 months now. And people saying, well, everything's still going on. That's why it's still going on, because they keep promising these people X number of millions, and people are seeking the end of the rainbow, except you never get there. Now these people are hiring or putting out contracts on all the clowns. Now the fun starts. I'm going to do a small musical break, because I know there'll be people listening to this. This is my little bit of humour to the clowns in the UN vehicles. The Rocky Mountain Way didn't go too well, did it? Hi all and welcome back. So I hope you got the gist of that. Basically, all the game players with their bogus currencies and raping of countries and governments have now, it appears, fairly conclusively, have now the tables turned against them. The governments have all been shown that they have no power. Rothschilds, Bushes, Clintons, Rockefellers, keep naming the names, the families. They don't have any power. The UN has no power. It doesn't have any sovereignty. These people have seemed to have gone through life unaccountable, and I can see sufficient evidence of that. But if you, like anyone in life, whether you're cabal or one of their minions, if you live your life by the sword, more times than not you end up dying by it. And the growth, apparently it's a proper full-on growth industry for contract killings, is now on the go. One hopes they do it all in private and it doesn't spill out onto the streets in various countries. But just maybe with the military now being made complete mugs out of again, maybe the military will now do the decent thing of what they should have done many, many years ago before they were bought off, and start looking after the people who pay for them and look after the American people. If we clean house, I know there's a lot of people who listen in countries around the world, but if we clean house here, the ripple effect will go out right across the world. It's not just about America. It's just that we have more idiots here, or clowns, operating on American soil. It's nothing to do with the American people, like it was nothing to do with the British people, with the British Empire or the Dutch. It's these same hidden rogue elements that have pervaded society for thousands of years, using hidden and sleight of hand tactics, divide and conquer, get the people fighting, get the people speaking different languages. We all used to speak the same language until the Lord, Aka, Anu, came down and changed it all. Why? Because the people were coalescing and joining up together. that they see as a threat. There's your answer. So instead of denigrating Muslims or Puerto Ricans or Mexicans or Canadians, or the Brits denigrating the Irish or the Welsh or the Scots, embrace them. Because they're your allies, not your enemies. Same applies in the fractured states of Europe. Bosnia, which was once Yugoslavia. Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, all split up, all divide and conquer. Again, you people should join together and fight the common enemy, which is the policy makers. The same applies in the Middle East. The people of Syria, the people of Lebanon, the people of Palestine, and the people of Israel. Bandy together and turf out the rogue elements. You know who operates ISIS. We've all been told many, many times who operates and who funds ISIS. Foreign invaders, turf them out. Put all your differences aside. Same applies North Korea and South Korea. You people, both countries, are the next plan for genocide. You don't think the controllers are interested whether South Korean people are saved because they're the cabal country? No, no, no. Pawns. This is one giant chess game. And all the people are the pawns. And what do you do in chess? The pawns get sacrificed. To protect whom? The castle. Who owns the castles? The elites. The bishop. Same people. And the kings and queens. Micro to macro. So, because you live in South Korea and you're protected by the US military, in inverted commas, don't think you won't get bludgeoned just the same. They just see it as one island. They don't care about collateral damage. Same applies in Africa. Everywhere you go around the world, division. I saw a documentary. People should watch that. Morgan Freeman, The Story of Us. Some really interesting and enlightening stories in that. Last week it was about the girl from Pussycat Dolls. I think it's Pussycat Dolls, the group, the Russian group. How she was put in jail for fighting for freedom, denigrated, and passed off in the media as lunatic. And of course, everyone believes what too many believe what the media tell them. Again, the ones they castigate in the media are the ones you should be supporting more times than not. Now, last night's one I watched was about the tribe in Rwanda, the Tutsis, and I can't remember the other name, that were fighting each other. Again, for no apparent reason. Just that was the way of life. But who created that way of life? And the Tutsi people were tortured, raped, dismembered, all kinds of heinous deaths. including this particular woman's husband and child. The man sat next to her was the one who killed him. Or, actually not killed, murdered him. And they've become friends. You could always play out on revenge, but that continues the cycle of violence. They chose to think and act different. But that's the key. It also covered the issues in Northern Ireland, but it still goes on. The division between Protestant and Catholic. And the two people, the woman wouldn't show her face. She was a Protestant, if memory serves me correctly. And the guy was Catholic. And they have been shunned in their own community. Just because you have a different religion. Is that what God taught you? Whoever he may be. That you should hate and commit violence on people because they've got a different religion. People know my opinion of religion. I think all of it's bogus, and I mean all of it. But people put a lot of time and are kind of devoted to it. But to me, it's giving your power away. Those two people ran out of town after that interview. And for those in America who are unaware, walls are not just in Israel. There's one in Belfast, separating Protestants and Catholics. Even at this day and age. Now again, lots of work has gone on in Northern Ireland and Ireland about the people coming together in the communities, mainly based on the children. Because they're the way forward, because the adults are too brainwashed with it. They're all frightened of each other to step out. That's what happens when you get in the group think. There may be 75% of that group who want to step out and not follow the division anymore, whether you're Protestant or Catholic. But the fear of being the first one or the first couple stifles it. Collect your numbers and go out en masse. There's a parade every year in Northern Ireland about celebrating the Protestant victory, which is an illusion in itself, because it was a Dutch victory over the people of Ireland. William of Orange, he wasn't even British, he was Dutch. That smashed the Catholics, Battle of the Boyne. And every July, the Protestants marched through the Catholic areas celebrating it. Subsequently, violence ensues. Rock throwing and all kinds of other shenanigans go on. But the solution is, don't give them the energy. All the Catholics have to do is arrange a day out and let them march. If they want to be idiots and have no idea of history, the real history, let them. What they're looking for is confrontation. But if you keep giving them year after year, they'll keep marching because they're getting what they want, the confrontation. But if you all take a day out and let them march through the road with no confrontation, they'll quickly get bored and realise what idiots they are. Wait till those people find out the real truth, that Protestantism is not a religion. It never was. They were a Catholic Protestant group protesting against the crimes and fraud and corruption of the Roman Catholic Church. Oops. And people still fight over that. One's not even a religion. And two, the idea of fighting over false gods, to me, I find insane. Right, let's get into something else I wanted to cover. Where are we? Energy beam directed weapons and the continuation of corralling people into tighter groups. You're going to see, well, hopefully not, given the intel, maybe actions will be taken that will avoid this. But it appears now that the incidents in California were energy beam directed weapons. As to who did it remains unknown at this point, and for which particular reason still remains unknown. But I warned of it 2 or 3 years ago, those of you with longer memories, that they were emptying out California. And basically corralling people into tighter and tighter groups. This is going on all over the world. They're moving people in Indonesia out to Australia. They're virtually moving all peoples of the Middle East into Europe. They've moved all the people of Puerto Rico into Florida. What will that do? Cause division. Because people will then blame the Puerto Ricans if the Florida economy goes down, when it's the policy makers. It's like the same people in the UK blaming the Polish people. Who brought them here? The same government many people are now campaigning to get back in. Labour. I warned of this back in 1997, was it? Or even 87. Can't remember now. It's that far back. When Tony Blair got in. That Labour would open the borders and it would cause division and it would cause racism. Because that's the way it goes. It's like the people in the southwest here blaming the Mexicans. They're taking all the jobs. No, they're not. It's the policy makers that are the problem, not the people. One thing I need to point out, is what's going to happen. Of course, we've had a number of events in America recently and Puerto Rico. What's going to happen long term to the insurance companies? Where's all the money coming from? Because you don't think that they save it all up, all the money we give them. No, they spend it. It goes to shareholders. But now there's a massive bill for California because of the fun and games there. What happens? There's still a massive bill for Oregon and the Northwest when there was fires up there. The rebuilding, allegedly, of Puerto Rico, Florida, Texas. And that's without any added events that may come in between now and the end of this year. no doubt our premiums will go through the roof. People, I'm getting lots of people coming forward to me now. People calling me or sending messages or emails. Because people are now feeling the effects of what I mentioned originally last year about the masks of illusion dropping. And how so many people around them are having issues or completely losing it. This will not improve anytime soon. This is why I asked you to do your own inner work and get in a calm and balanced state. You can't help those people. They have to go through it the hard way. You try and engage and help those people and they'll drag you into the abyss with them. But a lot of people are having issues with loved ones, male or female, family members and friends, long-time partners. They're just completely losing it. Like I said, it was forecast it would happen this year more than anywhere. Just stay calm, stay balanced, and retain what you have developed of yourself. They have to go through the dark night of the soul themselves. They've had plenty of time to deal with it, and they've ignored it. It's not a case of us just saying, well, F you, we told you, and get on with it. You literally can't engage these people. They went too far. You can engage, but expect violence. Heavy amounts of verbal and abuse. I warned last November, you can't help them anymore. You just can't. We will be there when they reach the bottom and they reach out for real help. No projection screens that they're using you as. The ongoing issues, this has been going on about a month now, and more are coming forward and are being exposed for playing games behind the scenes. And this is, again, it's part of a bigger issue. I'm kind of the target. It's just not unexpected. You know, you don't come into being an outspoken show host who's out in some of the intel like we do and not expect some kind of kickback. What I don't expect is from people within the group trying to discredit me and the group. The agents I can deal with. That's what they're paid to do. It's the ordinary members I can't really grasp what they're playing at. And so they're doing everything to try and discredit me and the group. Those people are just wasting their own time. They can keep digging, like others. They'll find nothing. And therein lies the problem. So then you make stuff up. So because they don't have anything to keep to stick on me, they're using former rogue connections like Keenan and his ilk to discredit. Or Dr. Nadu is the latest one, because he was on our show. These people have decided that Dr. Nadu is rogue, and so because I'm with him, I'm rogue also. Really? And they've even They've even dug out a almost 4-year loop. The masked crusader Scott Pollock from Chicago and his darkened room stage production pieces called The Critical Post via what's known as the Goldwater Report. Goldwater is correct. It's piss. But carry on. Mr. Pollock, that they're trying to use against me, is sponsored by various elite corporations. Go and check his website. And he also runs a children's talent school. Make of that what you will. Now, Mr. Pollock labelled me an international wire fraud conman, along with Drake and Neil Keenan back in 2014. Now, the only problem is to be involved in a fraud, you have to receive compensation to do so. And to date, I haven't had any money from Keenan. Keenan just takes off other people, as people know. Dr. Naidu or Drake. Although Drake did donate $450 to the start of the foundation fund. So I must be the only fraudster who receives no financial gain. More fool me, They said Mr. Pollock was warned if he uses my name again, he would be sued. He just threw me in because of the incidents with Keenan and Gene Haynes. Nothing to do with me and nothing to do with Drake. So, the same applies to those people who are attempting to sully my name currently via private texts, emails. A warning, go ahead and make my day. And make it all public instead of hiding behind the scenes. Because I'll give you the same issue I did to Mr. Pollock. You do it once more, and I sue for defamation of character. Now, I've warned in the past of triple-barreled names. All the patsies for false flags. John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, Catherine Austin Fitz, those type of names. Now, it seems there's more than a few clowns in the alternative media, both inside and outside our group, that also carry the triple-barreled names and also like to play games and be stooges. Yes, I know who you are. Final warning. And what gets me is some of these people were offered the opportunity to bring forward and challenge who they distrust, and they all rejected it. Funny that, isn't it? Maybe one asked the question, who's paying those people to do this? Because if you're not getting paid, why are you doing it? Like the Cassandra letter last week, she said, for 100 years we have fed you your entertainment and you have devoured our offering, supporting the lies you told, ignoring the nuggets given, and also the people of truth. And therein lies part of the problem. Who are the people of truth? That's not an easy question in the alternative media anymore, as many of you have found out eventually. And this is one of the reasons I rarely bring guests on the show anymore, as it muddies the waters. As if a guest says something contrary to me or someone else they follow, it becomes an issue. And it's also seen as a full endorsement of them by bringing them on the show. And the reality is, I've interviewed a number of people, mainly on Cosmic Voice and THI, that I didn't agree with in various parts of their narrative, and a few of them I believe none of it. But people will see it as an endorsement. Now the question of when looking at whether someone is valid or not is, what are they teaching you? Are they teaching you anything? What are they gaining? Is the show all about donations and selling people stuff? Is it all fear-based narrative designed to shock and in turn increase traffic to the site? Do they give dates that come and go? Do they make outlandish stock, dollar and metal market predictions that never ever come to pass? Has their narrative or demeanour changed? Are their answers consistent? Do they answer any questions you put to them? How often have they been found correct? Do they empower you, or do they put you in fear? Basically, they're some of the things that you yourself can look into and deduce from, without the need to put me in an awkward spot asking, is blah blah valid, or is he or she valid? For argument's sake, if you ask me, is blah blah valid or not, why is my opinion on matters of that nature more valid than your own? The very fact you have asked me suggests you yourself don't trust or believe that speaker. Does it not? And this show has been all about you, the listener, trusting your own instincts more and not being swayed by others. It's not all about follow me. I've mentioned that many, many times. There's nothing I love more than people coming up with their own solutions or ideas or their own narrative on certain events where they've worked it out themselves. Because we don't need one person who knows all the knowledge, we need all of us. Now, part of the issue we're having with this show is I and others have outed a number of people, which then attracts their followers to then attack the group. Now, I myself, I don't particularly like outing people. I just don't. If their narrative is hit and miss, I'm quite prepared to ignore it until they say something that's damaging or they're aligned with something that's damaging. Then I speak out. You know, if Corey Good was off on his own just talking about blue chickens and he had a couple of 100 followers, fine, let him carry on spouting shite. But I knew 2.25 years ago when I outed him, there was an agenda behind it, so I spoke out. I felt I had no option but to speak out. Of course, at that time, I didn't have an army of people support me. Kind of a lonely voice. It's only recently, in the last 6 months, and an army of people have now decided that Cody Good and Wilcock are what I said about them going back in June of 2015. It's easy in numbers, not as easy when it's only one as it was at the time. Same applied to Simon Parkes. His general narrative I can take or leave. But when people kept coming to me saying they'd been energetically raped after a one-on-one session with him, I had to speak up. Mr. Parkes since admitted it, but actually blamed his father, who according to Parkes is Anu. Nice chap. Same applies with Keenan and his agency and faction links. I couldn't prove one way or the other whether he'd ripped off Gene Haynes. I don't think Gene Haynes is particularly clean either, to be quite honest. Again, I can't prove that one way or the other. But when he starts reading out agency and faction scripts against the American people, then I spoke out. Yes, it got me a lot of flack, and yes, it got me booted. If I did it 1,000 times more, I would do it again, because it was the right thing to do. Now, many at the time didn't believe that either, but over time, like I said when I started this show, one of the first 2 shows, I've said me piece. I'm going to sit back and watch it unfold, and I will be proven correct. Keenan backtracked, Keenan apologised, and Keenan went quiet. He knew what I was saying was correct. If you look at that May 4th video again, the man was cringing, because he knew I knew. That's why I did the faction show, so people would understand it more. And then there's other things I've outed, like the Lord of One. Some found that to be enlightening, some still do. But only because you fail to recognise the hook at the end. The Lord of One is a human harvesting program. Period. Yes, it's got all love and light and all that drivel in it to pull you in. And you're all awash in purple light and love and light and let's all smoke pot and be happy and live happily ever after. And then the harvester comes in. And Wilcock knows that. Wilcock even outed himself recently, saying he may have wrote the script that started the cabal. Indeed, Mr. Wilcock. Indeed. The funny thing is, what very few will know, is Corey Good and his wife decided to concoct a story that ran along the lines of Lord of One to get the attention of Wilcock. And the clan fell for it. But it makes money for them both, and the covens they operate under, so what the hell. But some in the group haven't liked me out in some of the stuff, particularly out in those they may have followed. But we have all followed certain people that have turned out bad, myself included. And the key is, do you continue to defend the lie so you can always be right or appear right? Or do you do the right thing, accept you were fooled, and move on. That's something we all have to address on an individual basis. I called out one show person this week for spending 90 minutes putting everyone who listened in complete fear because of stuff she was allegedly shown when she was 3 via being in the programs. And now she recalls it as happening now or the near future. Except there's one big problem with it. All of the script she read was 4-year loop bullshittery. Every single word of it. EMPs and all the other stuff, New York, blah, 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 FEMA camps, guillotines, it was all in there. 4-year loop bullshittery. So I felt I had to warn people of that. There's a number of people in the group still posting posts, not realising it's 4 years old. Why? Because they're trying to pull you back into the loop. All the people that went missing 3 or 4 years ago in the alternative media all suddenly came back this year. I warned of it last year. Swiss Indo, the clowns at OPPT, Heather Giraffe and Danny effin McKenney, Lisa Harrison, all back out again with the OPPT crap. It's 4-year loop nonsense. It didn't happen then, and it's not happened now. But there's part of an ongoing, deeper problem here. As recently there have been a number of people in the alternative media who have stated they've been in these programs, be it MK Ultra or those type of programs, be it the Sfarley type training, military, Montauk, there's a whole heap of them. And like some of the super soldier people last year, many of them who have been in those programs are starting to break down and lose it. And some of their narrative is badly skewed. Many of them are repeating narrative from previous loops that was correct in those loops, but not in this one. As those loops have ended. Few or none of the people from the programs are able to recognise this fact and are passing on the information like nothing's changed. It has, and it will. As Shane said to Org Tellers after he lost the plot on the page, you know they lied to us as well, Org, don't you? Those in the programs were lied to as well. Everybody's been lied to. And yet you get people thinking, some people, not Shane, who think they're special because they've been in the programs and they're in the know. No, you've been made mugs of again. So where does this show stand? Well, have you learnt anything? Question mark. It's not for me to decide, that's for you to decide. Has the message been consistent? Has our narrative changed? Do I not read out the awkward questions and also give the full answers? Do I make money on this? Nope. Yeah, 18 months of keeping the foundation afloat, and not 1 cent of your money has gone into my pocket. None. And anyone who wishes to see the books only has to ask. It's all open and transparent, which is the way it should be. Not only with me, but everybody. But it's no fun ride. People often think it's fun being a show host and being in the know, knowing all the intel that's going on. But it also comes at a great cost due to threats of violence, which I've received, death threats, which I've also received, psychic attacks, attacks on people around me, a loss of free time. In fact, almost any free time, where I'm concerned. You could ask Chloe that. In essence, it's a loss of having a life, really. But it's something I was called to do. And do it, I will. We're going to see this out to the end. So people who think they'll play games and force me out, big mistake. As anyone who knows me over my lifetime, every time people threaten or push or try to stop me, only steals my resolve and I get stronger. I'd like to get taller, for those of you who've met me. I get stronger and I get a more steelier resolve to see this to the end. But I do wish people would quit playing games. Ultimately, those who play games are damaging themselves further than they already have. You see, I'm just a projection screen, someone to fire at. But one day those game players will realise it bounces back at you, and you will still have to face the ugly truth of yourself, only worse than it was before your false projections. The masks of illusion, as I called it, named it last year, and warned it would apply to all, now is in full flow. I think many are now seeing the evidence of that. Those that haven't done their inner work are scattered, divisive, projecting, unbalanced egos, petulant and in a state of panic. If this is you, and you can't say you weren't warned ahead of time, but you can still address it if you are any of the above, but it won't be as smooth if you'd done it when you were first warned. I know many people are tired and it all feels like it just drags on and on. I get that. I get it more than most. But sometimes people forget it affects those that put all their time into this and not just turn up and listen to a show or read a page a few times a week, a lot more. So spare a thought for those of us who are on the front line, the ones getting the threats. We give a lot of our time and at great risk to ourselves to make the changes we all want, and all we ask is support. That's all. Some say maybe I should be funded. Would I like to be funded? Absolutely. Not necessarily by the members. It'd certainly help out if I was doing this in a full time. people would argue, some people may argue, am I worth it? That's their own personal choice. Some would say yes, some would say no. It all depends on your own perspective. But the danger is once money becomes involved, it opens you up to all sorts of critics and critiques that were not prevalent beforehand. Many of us in the community have campaigned against charging people for the knowledge or the truth, as it is often led to darker paths too many times, and opens you up to those who wish to use you, or even worse, switch you. This show and its questions section, and also myself during the week, is always available for those with concerns to come forward with them. You ask, I answer. I always have. You may not like the answer, but over time the answer given turns out more right than it is wrong. I may sell myself short in playing down my role or lack of promotion of the show, but I will never sell the members or the listeners short. It's not what I'm about, and those who have met me in person will largely attest to that fact. We're going to have a music break, and this is how I get by. Hi all and welcome back. We're going to go into some questions and answers, and we've got a mixed bag this week. And we're going to start off with someone asking about the Dr. Naidu monetization program. And the question was, in your knowledge, can it affect UK benefits? Some people I've told about it claim housing benefits and also ESA or job seekers allowance, and they are concerned about if it will affect it, or if so, when. If the answer is yes, if the application gets sent in and is the waiting pool for 20,000 people, will the benefits be affected immediately or when the first payments from the program come through? Now I sent this direct to Dr. Naidu, and this is the response I got back. Once the trust is set up, benefits accruing from COLB to UK citizens are a non-issue because trusts can be the custodian and the depository of trust assets. Whether the payout will affect UK citizens is open to debate about how best UK citizens can defeat the government's encroachment upon their private property. It is more of a legal question. The trust will be ideal to shield beneficiaries from taxation and other oppressive laws, when we can start a new 5 million tranche for UK citizens without the need for copies of birth certificates. The trust is always a protective shield. So that's the answer to that. Okay. Thought I was getting messages then. This was held over from last week. I don't recall making a post. Maybe I did. A post. Head's kind of like everybody else, dealing with all the information coming from all angles is difficult. But I made a post about Merovingians and the Ashina clan, who were the Merovingians. I will go into that deeper on another show, given the second hour kind of overran quite a bit. But I don't recall making a post. Maybe you have to send me the link to that post and I can refresh my memory. Are all the famous magicians, Houdini, Copperfield, etc., and so on, demon possessed? I'm not too sure that that is the case. They may be It's possible, but I don't know one way or the other. Another person sending the questions, well, it's more of a statement that they are seeing repeated numbers, such as on a 24-hour clock, 13:33 and 15:15 and 21:21, and lots of people seeing 11:11. Me personally, I see 333 twice a day, more times than not. I went through a phase of waking up at 3:33 for the best part of a month, a couple of years ago. It's part of the information field that we have to work out. It's all a giant puzzle at the end of the day. What might have one meaning for one person may not apply to the other. It's all about where you are on the evolutionary scale of your own personal evolution. So the 333 for someone on the mental planes may mean something very different to those on the astral planes. So there's no fixed set, and it's up to you to find out and work out what it all means. You know, lots of people get songs and they think, Christ, I haven't heard that song, I didn't even like that song 30 years ago, why am I singing it now? Well, what you do is you go and look the words up. You may find something is a clue to what you need for then and the future. So it's a personal thing, the numbers, and there's no real. The person was asking where can you find information. There's lots of different sites that go on, Geomatra and whole heaps of other stuff. But I tend to think it does has some validity, but it can also go too far. So it's about what you get out of it as the individual. You made mention of an ambassador, Re-Earth. This reminded me of the UPU show and the ambassador guests on the show. I enjoyed the show and the information was well received. At the end of the show, each guest offered a closing remark to the listeners. I haven't heard much about these guests, but I've had Mrs. Manor on the show. She is great. And the question, do these ambassadors work for the state and the elites, or do they work for the people? They work purely for the people. If they do represent the people, what are they doing? More than you realise. Where are they? No comment. Why aren't they informing the people of the true nature of things? They are. You haven't listened to the show. I was selected as the front person for the group to disseminate the information when it is safe to do so and when it's available. So some of those people that were on those shows give me some of the information. So that's where that come from. Are they in fact doing this thing very slowly right in front of us to the ones that can see? Again, that depends on perspective. Some people think that this is all going way too slow, and then you realise that this has been a control system for many thousands of years, minimum of 16.5, and possibly you could even go as far back as 78,000 years when the loops started. People are expecting deeply ensconced system that has involved not only humans but non-humans as well, where they've all got together with AI machines and perfected a system that keeps us all as slaves. And we don't have the resources they do. And yet within 5 years, we've almost brought them to the knees. 16,500 years control. If we took 1,000 years to bring it down, it's quick compared to what they took to build it. But in 5 years, we've almost brought them to their knees. Some would say they're on their knees and crawling. And the people may say, well, I can't see any evidence of it. Well, you're alive, aren't you? There's your evidence. You, everyone who listens to this show, are all still alive because they failed. Because if they had succeeded, all of us would be dead now. 90%, 95%, 500 million living in harmony with the planet. That's not us. That's them. And it may take another 2 generations to get the golden age, because you've got too many people who are programmed. And I'm not just talking about those who have been in the programs either. We've all been programmed to various levels, mind controlled to various levels, be it education or TV. And then you've got a whole generation who have been brainwashed with video games. It's not easy to unprogram people. Yes, a recent argument is the flag in America. People just won't accept it's not an American flag, and they'll still fight for it. That's just a simple basic program. Or the anthem was written by a British guy, establishment guy as well. Again, it's not our anthem, but people will fight over it. The issue I had with Drake, and Drake was telling you the same as what I was telling you, we don't have an American government. We haven't had an American government since 1871. None of us were alive when we had the last American government. And then Drake tells you to vote for Trump. It's USA Inc. again. Can it change while Trump's there? Yes, it can. But the answer is, nobody vote. That sends the message. We know what you're doing. We know what you've been up to. We're no longer playing your game. We're going to select our own people to be the government. Somewhere outside of the District of Columbia, which has nothing to do with America. Zip. Like Puerto Rico is nothing to do with America. That's to do with the District of Columbia, the feds and the IRS. And yet Americans just sat there and allowed the perceived government to give Puerto Rico $36.5 billion last week, whilst California, Texas and Florida received $16 billion. Does that not sound right to you? We have to think and act different. We have to look deeper into things. You can't carry on repeating the same things. The stars and stripes and the flag, and we're going to honour this, and America's the greatest, when we're not. It's our responsibility to make it great again. not Trump, or heaven forbid, Android, or Pence, or Ryan, or any of the other clans up there. No, us. The people is what makes the country great, not governments. And that's our responsibility. When is this situation going to end? We are dealing with this knowledge from 2012. We know so much. What can we do to stop bankers, governments, sick care, food poisoning? When can humanity live in freedom, together in love, honour, truth and integrity with all of humanity? As soon as possible. But we can't carry on with the old programs and expect things to change. You have to think different and real difference. That's what happened in Rwanda. They thought different, and the two warring tribes are now working with each other. That didn't involve government. That's the people. And this is what this show has been telling you from day one. It's us that drives the change. And yet many will state, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that. Your intention and thinking in a different way changes the frequency. People often think they have to go and do something physical, and many do. Like people in the foundation doing all kinds of paperwork and filing this and going through the archives, etc., etc. But everyone can annoy their senators who are not doing right by the people. If you can type on Facebook, you can type in a phone and speak to your senator and bombard them. We're not happy with what you're doing and we don't want you. Go away. Or you can use your other abilities that many of you don't think you have. I stated last year, manifestation is a lot easier now than it was. And yes, many fall down the wrong path. Well, I want to win the lottery. If that's your first thought, you're not on the right path. So you think winning the lottery is going to get us all freedom. It's not. Think big. Empower yourself. The show's done many things to empower all of you. Use it. Like I said, manifestation's a lot easier now than it has been. Look what happened in California when they all prayed for rain. Oops. So you have to be careful with it and think. Not just throw out the old lines that you've always repeated. No, look at them. Are they in balance with everybody else? Will it be beneficial to others, not just to the self? Because that's part of the problem we're facing, is people are selfish. It's all about what they're going to gain out of it, not what we're going to gain out of it. When you next talk to the council, would you please ask them what they're doing about off-world trade of our children? And I'm of the understanding that's either ended or massively reduced. Is it true an organisation called OFA, Organising for Action, is being commandeered by Mr. Obama? And will it be an up-and-coming threat to the positive actions being taken The answer to that is yes, he's involved in bullshittery. Of course, he's just been demoted as the head of the penis. Kind of fitting, really. And the reason why he was demoted is because nobody would listen to him. I would suggest nobody's going to listen to him with this either. And no, it won't have any threat to what we're doing. When will we hear from Manor again? Maybe an update as to how things are going. Well, like I said before, some of the updates are from them on the shows. I'm just the front person for it. But yes, Miss Manor will be back on when it's suitable to do so. There's lots of work being going on currently that takes up huge tracts of time, and it's more important what they do than appearing on the shows. But if she or any of the others find the time, then we'll do a show. Robert's got the record. He's listened to the Manor show 20 times now. I'll be giving you a test, Robert, next week to see how much you grasped of it. Shane has recently done 2 interviews that I felt were questionable. One with Cara St. Louis and the other with Lauda Leon. Is this being done for us to make up our minds, or in your opinion has Shane gone rogue? I would hate to think that he's gone the way of org tellers. It's all very confusing and sad to me. Well, I kind of touched on that before. The fact that you've asked a question suggests you have doubts. My opinion of whether I'm going to validate it or not shouldn't change yours. For the record, I love Shane a lot. That's why I played the song He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. Do I agree with everything he says? No. Does he agree with everything I say? No, he doesn't either. But as long as people don't interfere like they have done in the past 2 months, Shane and I get on fine. We agree to disagree on certain subjects. Was I disappointed with those 2 shows? Yeah. You know, I've questioned some of the appearances Shane had made, and I've told him himself to his face. You know, particularly appearing on that clown CW Chanter, where he basically trashed Shane for 3 hours, and Shane sat there. I don't think that is valid. But we have people behind the scenes basically stating that I'm trashing Shane on every show. Those who listen to this show know the difference. It's a pity Shane doesn't listen to it, as he'd know the difference. So we had an issue and we resolved it, much to the I'll put my teeth back in, much to the chagrin of certain people who are playing divide and conquer. Now, Shane was supposed to be on a week last Tuesday, but had to cancel for private reasons. Sometimes people forget we have private lives as well, and private lives can be difficult. Private lives for many of us are difficult at the moment because of what's going on. Like I said, I don't agree with everything Shane says. We have some disagreement, but we agree to disagree. I don't think he's going the same way as Tellers. I think his programme broke down badly. You don't need me to tell you that. The members that watched him implode on the page saw that without my comment. But hopefully Shane will reschedule and come on our show again. Time will tell. Is Big Ears Charlie, Prince Charles, going to be the next king? I would suggest not. He's another one clown like Obama, who no one will listen to. He seems to think he's already the king and he can dictate to people. But what he's found is most people have told him to go and F yourself, Charlie. We're not listening to you. So, no. Any update on a number of other countries joining the Kingdom of Mana scheme? To the last I heard, although I haven't asked the question, I may have more, is 78 countries were signed up, and there was 144 who had taken an interest in it. If all those 144 sign up, that's basically 2/3 of the countries. Now, if some of the bigger ones, likes of here, our group's already filed via certain Congress people for sovereignty for America. It was filed on January the 3rd of this year. If Trump wants to do anything that appears to be beneficial to the people, he can push that bill through and get it done and declare sovereignty. Then everything changes. At that point then, work can be done on declaring the people sovereign. You have to declare the country sovereign first, because we've got too many people with unbalanced egos who will then take control of the country because they're sovereign. So that's why it has to be done that way. Sovereignty is for all, and eventually that's the long-term goal. But I'll get more updated numbers on the progress of that, possibly for next week if time allows. We'll see. What is a spiritual evolvement healing tool recommendation that you might have if one were to find out that one's past life, one of many perhaps, and want to heal from any bad karma from such, especially if that past were of a much darker nature than one embraces naturally now? Well, they're already spent. Doesn't apply to here. See, the reality as I understand it is we've all been light and dark at various stages of our soul development. You can't just go through a whole soul development of being pure light and not recognizing the dark. That's what happened with this universe. A badly designed experiment where the dark came in with the fractal virus, and it was too late. It spread too far before the light could recognize it. They didn't perceive it. This is why I always talk about having a mixture. It's all about the balance. You can't just eliminate dark. And yes, they tried to eliminate light in this universe. Or as I've said previous, U inverse. Basically, that's what they've done. So what's gone on in previous lives is already spent. If you're having difficulty dealing with that darker nature, then you need to embrace it as much as the one you're living now in a lighter nature, because it's part of you, it's part of everybody else. It's called soul development. The next life, you may be a Cabal member in a different universe or a different planet. You might play one of the false gods. It's all about a soul development learning curve. But if you're going on about that you have to address the bad karma of then in this one, then the answer's no. So I hope that helped. Have we got any more questions? I think, well, there might have been a couple on me. Wait, let me just check that out. Do you think they can use family members or friends to get around our shielding to attack us, to destabilise us and lower our frequency? Yes, they do. Both of them. It's up to you to fend them off. Too many. It's a sad world we live in. There's no getting away from that. But there's really... it comes down to a trust issue, and that's where they play on. Well, I trust my partner, or I trust my sibling, or my parents, but what if they're being used to bring you down? I've seen it happen, because it's happened to me, so I know it takes place. And you have to stand and take your own personal responsibility in that case, and not allow them to do that. This is why I mentioned earlier about don't engage these people. It doesn't matter who they are. They'll pull you back into the mire. Use the empowerment you've gained from your inner self to be able to do the shielding and stand in your own sovereignty, and don't let anyone take that away. Where are we? Egregore. Can you speak a little bit? Yes, on an egregore. This may go on for a bit. Something Chloe prepared for us on the egregore. The black magic egregores seen by some in here are thought form produced in origin. You thought it up, it exists. This comes down to the manifestation abilities again that many people don't think they have. Now, covens create them by utilising the exact way we as humans would manifest, create anything. We focus on a specific intent and hold that intent strongly until it manifests in creation. So if many are doing it if the whole populace decided we want freedom and hold on to that intent, then that's what we get. But unfortunately, we're dealing, like I mentioned earlier, about the program people. And the covens use what we would normally be able to do if it were not for us being in the organic realm. Black magic is unfortunately much more potent in the AI recording, which we are in, but phasing out. The black magic covens invert the positive aspects of human manifestation abilities to unknowingly bind our soul energy and use our ability to manifest against us by their creation and use of egregores. In other words, they manifest the monsters of the thought form. It's a difficult concept that I can't imagine myself doing that. Well, be careful where your energy and where your thoughts are going, more so over the last year than at any other time. And they do this the same way we would, but they set a very specific negative intent with that thought form and hold this thought form intent very strongly to adhere to any who agree to the belief in the specific thought form qualities. Actual manifestation of it, a natural ability of humanity when we were in organic, has been co-opted in here, and that is distorted and used to create illusionary fields of perception in persons who want whatever the concept of the surface thought form is very strongly. AI copied it, so much of how humanity's mind works and natural abilities that it could not overcome them. But what it could do was tip the scales of balance towards the dark black magic being a much more potent with all the Draco parents, covens, rituals, while convincing us that we could still manifest reality in the construct. Egregores are often focused around an object, a building, or a statue, or even a person. A lot of the egregores some won't like is cats. Go and look at the statues around the buildings. I know someone who's going to give me stick over that, but it's true. A lot of the egregores are cats. Anyway, they're always created by groups of persons. Many hold the intent and the occult purpose if done by black magic or black magicians. Before the covens began to utilise them for the big companies, AT&T, pharmaceuticals, Google Inc., to name but a few, they were used to conglomerate knowledge that all whom sent intent to them could access. Egregores can be used for knowledge sharing, but it's all about the specifics of the ones who set up the thought form the egregore was based on. Now they use that same two-way exchange of egregores to draw off life force energy and knowledge of all whom are adhered to them by their beliefs in whatever the building, or the statue stands for. This plays into some of the buildings in your own countries. Statue of Liberty being one of them, egregore. The egregore created by the black magic covens is often much more than what the souls who support it bind their own souls to it by believing in the said company's mandates, or the statue commemorating some event or person. An individual who sets an intent and holds a specific thought form in the construct, unfortunately, becomes a tulpa, T-U-L-P-A, in the construct, an illusionary bubble maintained and created by them of only what is real to them, but not us. The bottom line is knowing where your attention energy is going. Is it going to a tulpa, a false reality bubble, or is it going to an egregore based of patriotism, consumerism, or even transhumanism? Best conscious choice is to send your attention energy to the real truth. In essence, we are, by speaking to others of like mind to us, we can create sufficient thought forms and intentions for our highest benefit, not theirs. By continuing to deny the false reality, we will unconvince ourselves of the deceptions of the Draco, the parents and the covens, and the so-called all-powerful companies, institutions that they created, powered by these egregores around them. So, hope that answers your question. Where's the last one? I recently read the Hebrew meaning of the word manna is man, is the biblical story of the Lord feeding the Israelites manna from heaven. Now, it's a different meaning. It was in the show that explaining the reasons for that. It goes back a lot further, and I can't remember the exact details of it now, but it was explained in the show. But is that a story about cannibalism? It may be in the Hebrew or Anunnaki, which gives it away by mentioning the Lord. Did the Lord feed the human people flesh, human flesh? And is the kingdom of manna mean the kingdom of man? So refer to the August 1st show. The answers in that. I can't remember all the details off the top of my head, otherwise I would give you the answer, but it's not where you're going from. Hebrew is Anunnaki, Marduk, Anu, Enki, Enlil, all that stuff. The Lord is Anu. Of course, the Anunnaki were known as the chosen ones, like the Israelites were also known as the chosen people. It's the same thing playing over and over again. Illusion. Right, I think we'll should end the show. That was all cobbled together in the last 24 hours. I had a busy week and I haven't been too well this week. Well, I'm doing okay now. And I'll all be fired up back for next week. And also on Sunday we have an evening with Thomas, it all being well, with guest Carl Appel, who's been on our show before, to do with in support of John Darash and National Liberty Alliance. But his story will be completely different. Look forward to that. So that will be at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time this coming Sunday. We may have a show Tuesday, I don't know yet. I will post a notification if we do, and failing that, we'll be back next Thursday with more of the same. But maybe each week we creep more and more to where we want to go. Events of this week have been fairly critical for them, not for us. The masks of illusion that they've put up, that they have this all-conquering, all-consuming power and control, is just that. It's an illusion that is falling apart by the second, never mind by the week. Right, I hope you've enjoyed the show. Lots to ponder again, lots to look forward to. But the main thing I would like people to take away is you really have to start thinking and acting different, on a different level. We can't carry on thinking and acting the same way like the people in Rwanda they thought different, they acted different. Instead of bludgeoning each other, they became friends. Don't play the divide and conquer game. It only helps them. Right, my name's Thomas Williams. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. Bye for now.